ever since I was 5, 6 years old. I've always wanted to be in sports. I tried out for Little League when I was 8 years old, but the coach didn't want to use me because he was afraid I was going to get hit, which is normal for most people that have cerebral palsy.
You know, he was really a typical little boy. I mean, he wanted to do everything all the other kids could do. He was, you know, he had the same personality. He really didn't, I mean, as a little boy, I don't know that he realized he had a handicap, and I think he just tried to do what all the other kids did.
My brothers and sisters pretty much helped shape who I am today, because they got me through problems when I was a kid. They got me through school. They helped me with homework.
Our father he had a little issue with alcohol. So our father was, I mean, he was there, but he wasn't there, so to speak.
And the kids were pretty close because they were dealing, you know, with an alcoholic father who was married to somebody dealing with an alcoholic husband, and people feel sorry for you when they find out that you're in a dysfunctional family or there's alcoholism or whatever involved. But, you know, as bad as it was and as hard as it was, I think that for the kids, they've all, you know, they've grown through what they've had to go through. The other kids walked right around a year old, and Chris was not walking yet, and so it was just his activity development was slower and different than the other kids.
I think the challenges that I face is being limited physically on things that I can do, like since I'm basically, you know, with my cerebral palsy, it's like I have one hand that's fantastic and the other hand not so fantastic. Dressing sometimes is a problem.
We tried to treat him like a regular kid, and I think that it may have been harder at times, or may have been hard at times, but I think he really appreciated that. I think Chris had a unique relationship with our dad because he got to know him a little bit better after my dad stopped drinking. So I think he probably had a bit of an advantage in that respect.
The only problem with my father a lot was the fact that he was drinking, and then after the drinking problem, he ended up seeing other people, and that wasn't fun.
In terms of his relationship with my dad, I mean, when he was younger, I would say that, you know, there really wasn't a big relationship with any of us with my father. But I think later on, as he became a teenager, I think it really helped him out in terms of having a father figure, and probably more importantly, somebody who really, you know, tried to treat Chris as a normal kid and as an adult, actually.
He had been interested in sports from the time he was very, very young, probably because of my husband was real into sports, and so were his two older brothers. Chris picked up on all that.
You know, when I was growing up, it was on all the time because I watched the Cubs, and I just got into watching those games. And also in the morning, I'd pick up the sports section before my father could get to the newspaper. I'd always get the newspaper.
He was picking up the newspaper and getting the stats and also watching a lot of sports. And what he would do is somehow he would set up games in his head. He would go through and actually set up different moves and things that he would think that the teams should be doing, or how they should be playing the game, or how the game should be you know, and he would play all these things in his head.
And it was just the numbers, just the whole, watching the game, just, you know, it did something to me. Just like be watching what those guys do, just, you know, boggles my mind.
Just his way of dealing with his physical impairment and not being able to actually play the games, so he would play them in his head.
I tried out for Little League when I was 8 years old, 7, 8 years old. But the coach didn't want to use me because he was afraid I was going to get hurt, which is normal for most people that have cerebral palsy in the middle to late 70s. I mean, sometimes you have to deal with it and just take it with, you know, with a grain of salt, and that's what I did. I mean, I just, oh well, okay. So I guess it's more time for wiffle ball then. That's pretty much how I looked at it. Lived in a houseboat down in the Florida Keys in Big Pine. My father had gotten it, but then since my parents were separated, he decided to move down to Key West, so he left us the houseboat, me and my mom. Anyway, he and my mom had gotten back together and were, you know, like, acting like a couple.
On the boat, we had noticed when you got on and off, sometimes you'd get a shock.
We had an electrical cord, electrical wire, a live wire happening, electrical problem on the boat. But my mother and my father couldn't figure out what it was.
And my husband had called or talked to a friend who was going to come over like that day or the next day and check out why all this was happening.
I had left. I went to school, and all of a sudden while I was at school, about third period, I got the call that my mom was looking for me. I was supposed to go to the guidance counselor's office and something had happened. During that time, after I left, the puppy we had just gotten like 2 days before ended up following me to the bus stop. The puppy went back to the boat and tried to get on.
The dog had jumped in the water, and we were living on a houseboat, and it was in a marina. So I picked up the dog from the water and set him on the dock. And before I could grab him and pick him up and get back on the boat with him, the dog jumped on the boat. And when the dog jumped on the boat, he got caught in reverse current on the boat.
Well, my mom, who saw the puppy, ended up screaming frantically. And
my husband came running out. He had been on the boat taking a shower, so he was wet.
And he came out to see what was going on, and he got himself caught on the railing. And he passed away quickly right after that. A
friend and I went to school to pick him up and then told him about it. And of course he was totally devastated. We were able to talk about it and work through it.
One thing I do regret from that whole thing is that my father and I fought the night before he passed away. It was a hard time because of the finality of it. When we were together, he was probably one of my best friends. I mean, we had that kind of a relationship with each other. We could make each other laugh. Sure, we fought just like any other father and son would, but I wouldn't trade my father for anything. I would say my father dying, I would say that would be a turning point in my life because of the fact that he passed away, he wasn't coming back. It forced me to become more mature. It forced me to start thinking that I shouldn't have the mentality of me against the world anymore.
I've known Chris since college, junior year in college. Met him at Barry University in Miami Shores.
He was a student there when I was a student, and we met in the video production area.
And basically, you know, Barry pretty much accepted me for who I was. You know, I mean, they accepted me, you know, even though I wasn't the greatest student in the world. They gave me the opportunity to graduate from there within 4.5 years or so. You know, it got me the degree that I needed to get the position I have now. One of the guys that used to work here, Bob Becker, Pete Soto, used to go to Barry with me. They went to college with me at Barry University. And they noticed that I had done different things with the basketball team, and I would be broadcasting the games. I had a basketball show, I'd be producing that. I had a radio show that I was producing on the Barry radio station. And they remembered me from that time.
He was really a go-getter even back then, and I think that was, you know, the first impression you see when you meet Chris is, you know, wow, I mean, here's a person who's deaf in both ears and he has cerebral palsy. You're like, well, you know, you kind of got to tread lightly around him and, you know, give him the easy tasks, but that really wasn't the case. I mean, really my first impression when I met him was you could treat him just like a normal person. Bob
became the producer of in-game entertainment for the Marlins and had Pete, who was his associate producer at the time, but he also needed a production assistant that happened to know sports. So one of the first people he thought of apparently was me.
He had a Rain Man-like knowledge of sports. He was trying desperately to get involved on the playback side of things, the broadcast side of things, and he just couldn't. He couldn't, you know, break in. You know, it's hard. Obviously, it's hard to do, you know, when you don't have, you know, a disease like cerebral palsy. But so Bob and I were talking, and, you know, he said, let's make him an intern. You know, just get him on board. You know, we have this great opportunity. Why not let him be part of it?
I owe them a lot for everything that I've been able to get through while I've been here.
You know, you could throw out a ridiculous name and he'll know the guy's stats, and it was great to have that around because, you know, we knew baseball, but not like Chris.
My duties with the Marlins are to assist the producer of in-game entertainment.
His job entails him to manage all the tape archive, log tapes, and he does that like it's second nature. He knows exactly what to do, gets it done, does a great job.
Say Mike Jacobs hits a home run, and Eric wants to use it, our producer ends up wanting to use it for a video. And all I have to do is find that part and then, you know, tell Eric what I have.
We had just pulled off a trade which happened overnight, and we got Jeff Conine, and for that next game we needed footage of Jeff Conine, so I just pretty much go to Chris and tell, hey Chris, I need all this footage, and Chris will search our archives and make sure we have all the tapes and get all that stuff ready for us.
With Chris being the video archivist and being in charge of our entire video library that consists of 5,000 beta tapes and about another 3,000 DVDs. Sometimes if it's a box of, 15, 20, 25 pounds, it's not that he doesn't have the strength, but sometimes his mobility will make it where we need to have someone help him carry the boxes around.
Some of the challenges that I have is sometimes the energy level isn't there at times, like physically you get run down.
In baseball you get tired a lot. We work 14-game homestands. You're there all day and all night. Chris Myers, it was one of the big challenges that he had to face was, staying strong and energetic throughout those homestands.
We didn't adjust anything for him, and I think that, it kind of strengthened him a little bit, but it wasn't like, he needed a tremendous amount of help. He's fiercely independent and has been for forever, and that's one of the things I think I admire most about him. I mean, he really doesn't ask for help, and you'll see him struggling on something, and eventually you'll go over and help him, but he doesn't ask for help, and if he does, it's because he absolutely can't do it.
I never have to worry about it because I know if Chris is working on it, he's going to get it done and he'll get it out, and he's pretty punctual on his stuff. Some days I'm like, Chris, you can relax, they can get this DVD tomorrow, this tape, the next day, but he makes sure it gets done, and he wants it done then.
But overall, he's one of the hardest working people I know, and he definitely does not allow his abilities to limit anything that he does.
quality that I found in Chris that led me to hire him for the Florida Marlins was really his love of baseball, his love of all sports, his vast knowledge of stats. I mean, he could tell you every stat from every baseball player from the 1950s on.
Sometimes that scares me. I mean, that sometimes scares me because I've always had that ability to do that. Ever since I was 5, 6 years old, 4, 5, 6 years old, I've always wanted to be in sports.
He's always been great at that. When you need to know something in a pinch and you need to find that tape, he knew exactly where it was.
And because back when I was a kid, I just read a lot, sports trivia books, watch TV, and somehow it just got in my brain.
When did Alex Arias have that, that big hit versus Philadelphia? I think it was Philadelphia. It was Philadelphia, July 4th, and it happened in the 11th inning.
Yeah, I wonder what this guy's batting, when Jupiter's in line with the moon. 245. It's like, wow.
I also like to say I'm the comic relief of the organization, but
just who he was, kind of with a sense of brevity, and so he's just kind of steady Eddie, Chris. I mean, he does have his episodes and his moments, and even when those happen, they kind of lighten the room.
I think one of my favorite ones is he was typing in a lot of matrix information on the computer for the stats and everything for the game on the Marlins night.
And Chris was always getting aggravated because our former boss would always tell him he had to go home if he was tired because he was prone to lose his temper. So he hated that. She treated him like he had a disability. And if he was tired, he had to come in late or he had to go home, and it bugged the hell out of him. So he was in a rotten mood that day, and Bob comes in and says, "Did Reggie Miller retire?"
I asked Chris, did Reggie Miller retire?
And Chris was so involved in his typing, he said, "I'm not tired." So everybody looked at each other and laughed, and they said, "Chris, did Reggie Miller retire?"
And Chris heard, "Are you tired?" And he goes, "I'm not tired."
I'm like, "No, Chris, did Reggie Miller retire?" And Chris like, "Bob, I'm not tired."
"I'm not tired."
"Did Reggie Miller retire?"
Chris says, "I am not tired."
"I'm not tired."
"Did Reggie Miller retire?"
"I'm not tired." And it went on 5, 6 times. And you're just sitting there. I was dying. It was like an Abbott and Costello bit. And he kept hearing, "Are you tired?"
And he threw his headset off and walked out of the room, and I had to go chase him down. I'm like, "Chris, I asked if Reggie Miller retired." He's like, "Oh no, Reggie Miller didn't retire."
And it was hysterical. And he would lighten up, and you'd have a laugh about it, and it was over. Those things about Chris are, it's a great thing.
With Chris's impact with the Florida Marlins, it just sums up in one word. I mean, 2 World Series. He was there for 12 years, 13 years. Well known throughout the organization.
Watching Game 7, being there for Game 7 of the World Series in 1997, seeing Edgar win the game with that base hit, seeing Craig Counsell crossing the plate, sharing it with the people that were working with me at the time.
When the Marlins won the World Series that year, I walked downstairs into the control room, and the first person I ran into was Chris Myers, who was bawling. Just tears of joy just flowing from him because the Marlins won the World Series, and all the hard work he put in all year really helped that.
I would say, winning the World Series back in 2003 when the Marlins beat the Yankees at Yankee Stadium.
When we were going to New York for the 2000 World Series, you could tell Chris was like, a kid in a candy store. We were, getting on the bus and getting ready to fly up to New York, and it was like Chris's feet weren't touching the ground, and you could just tell Chris was having a blast with it.
I can't describe the kind of feeling when you walk into a stadium, in Yankee Stadium, and be out into the monuments after the game. We all got to go out to the monuments, and that was just an awesome feeling, knowing that you've beaten the Yankees on their field.
The day of the ring ceremony, Chris, Myers and Soto, he was called first, and to see his face when he came off that line and he came up to me holding that ring, and he opened it and saw his name, and he just burst and he collapsed really into my arms, and everyone was staring because everyone was proud of Chris. Chris was like, everyone's favorite, obviously, and here I am, a softball lump, and I was trying to hold it back. I couldn't though. Thank God my wife was there, because I let go of Chris, sat down, and buried my face in her so no one would see me. But that was a great moment in time, and there are so many of those great moments and things, you know, that he's been part of, and, you know, sharing that moment. He was the first guy I saw when I walked into the control room after we won, and he was, you know, huge face lit up, and those moments, you know, you can't get better than that. That's the truth. Chris was always, obviously he was a highly functioning cerebral palsy patient, but he always almost wanted to deny it, that he had it. We always just say, you gotta let people know, especially, you know, when you're trying to date someone, you gotta let them know. And it doesn't surprise me that later on, after he kind of settled into his life and he decided to use his status with the Marlins to better the cause and to help the cause of cerebral palsy.
And through his affiliation, he has brought in or helped there be an affiliation with the Florida Marlins Community Foundation, where there is a night here where they help raise money for United Cerebral Palsy.
When the Marlins do pregame presentations, he's always on the field holding the check that the Marlins donated, and he's always involved with their organization when it comes to be like the ambassador.
I think Chris's involvement with United Cerebral Palsy is commendable on his part. He really is trying to reach out and helping those who are afflicted the way he is, and he's taking a lead role in that, and I think that's great for him to do that.
He always wanted to be normal, and he is, you know, mentally normal and all that. He does have cerebral palsy though, and I think he struggled with it for a long time, and as he got older, he matured a little bit and understood that he could use his platform to benefit the cause, and you know, it's probably one of the more, you know, noble things he's done, and he should be very proud of that.
I haven't accomplished my goal of becoming a producer, of an in-game entertainment, or maybe someday being a director of in-game entertainment somewhere.
Production itself is kind of a cutthroat business, especially in South Florida. You're always up against it, no matter who you are. But when you add in a disability, it makes it a lot tougher. You know, Chris has kind of never been able to get that next job because he can't shoot, he can't do a lot of that stuff that, you know, requires the physical abilities.
A lot of people look at him and they think he's physically challenged, and people might think he's mentally challenged. That's not the case. He's very competent. He just has a physical challenge that he's got to overcome, and he has been. And I think that's probably a lot of problems. People look at him that way.
You've been any job anywhere too long, you kind of want to see what you could do next. And I know Chris is no different than anyone else, and I know he's tried to do other things, and, you know, he's got a great resume. He's a two-time World Series ring winner. He's got a great amount of credibility and experience, but when you meet Chris, you automatically see the disability, and then you go, well, he's a good kid, good resume, but, you know, I don't think this is right for our organization. So I think that's probably his biggest challenge.
And I just gotta keep on plugging at what I'm doing now, and hopefully someday, who knows, maybe the opportunity will present itself, and we'll see how it goes from there.
Chris and I reunited in North Carolina. He came and visited me, and he came in, sat down at my desk, and as we were chatting, true story, spur of the moment, I offered him a job. I mean, he didn't ask for the job, he wasn't on a job interview. We were sitting there talking about family and life, and I said, Chris, how'd you like to come work here? And the rest is history.
He moved down to Raleigh for all the right reasons. He knew that he wanted a change in his career that would provide him more variety and more challenge. And I think it was an excellent move for him to be able to get a fresh start with an organization that may recognize some more of those talents and give him more latitude in terms of his contributions to their organization.
We do many events now as opposed to one event, so it's a little crazy and hectic. and Chris has a lot on his plate now. So, I mean, he's really advanced. He's gone from being a guy that would just input stats in a computer to a person now with our company that's an office manager and a person that really helps organize the different events we're on and keep everybody on their toes.
It was really, really hard for me to let go and to, you know, let him kind of do his thing and do whatever.
It doesn't matter his situation. He always seems to get his job done. He doesn't let any of that affect him, and doesn't let him, you know, let it slow him down.
I kind of feel that a little bit more enriched that you've met him, that you've experienced something with him. And personally, I'm glad that I got to share that in '97 with him. And you know, I love seeing the little life triumphs for him. You know, to hear him talk about the second World Series run and knowing that somebody else experienced that with him.
Matter of fact, we'll never be the same without him, so I'm glad to work with him for these 12 years we've been here. He's just a great friend and a great person to have around.
What I see for the future with Chris is, you know, many, many, many more years of working together, and hopefully one day retiring and looking back on all this and laughing and smiling and saying, you know, it was a pretty good ride.
I would guess that there are very few people, if any besides Chris, who works for a professional team who has taken on the challenges and the struggles that having cerebral palsy in life has caused him, and yet not let it get in his way.
He, you know, is a guy who has never really gotten enough credit for who he is, and I'm glad to know that when I walk that path again, and when I walk down that memory path to 1997 and winning that World Series, that Chris is always right there beside me.
I had probably, to me, one of the best families I could know. I mean, the credit goes to my mom, part of the credit goes to my dad, and all my brothers and sisters that helped me throughout the way.
But Chris didn't settle. I mean, he said, you know, I want more of a challenge. I want to be able to do more things. I can do more things. I'm going to try and do that. And that's what he did. So I guess my biggest thing that people could learn from Chris is, if you do have a developmental disability, don't just settle. Understand that, you know, there are contributions that you can make, and you should, you know, try and strive to be all you can be.
With an RBI, that's not bad. Okay.